Next is Paula Laine, CEO of the Finnish Climate Fund, based in Helsinki. Thank you so much for joining us, Paula, and please tell us what your organization does and what are you working on to help those startups scale.
Thank you. So I think the Finnish Climate Fund is an example of a policy trying to provide this patient capital for the scale-up gap problem that was already brought up. So basically at the core of it is increasing the investment to solving the climate change problem, and to do it in a way that complements the other policies that governments already are using. Let's go to the next slide already. So the Finnish Climate Fund is a state-owned special assignment investment company focusing on climate change, low carbon industries, and combined to them also promoting digitalization. And we provide capital loans in large-scale projects where our funding enables the project to take place in the first place or to be implemented either earlier or at the larger scale than it would without our funding. So that's our positioning with our funding. Next slide. So we have two investment categories. First one is scaling up the deployment of climate solutions, where we operate on subordinated loans, which may or may not include also conversion options. The ticket size for our investments in this category is from 2 to 20 million euros, which typically hits the space where you for the first time have to do a one-off bigger investment in scaling up. Then the other investment categories are platforms that enable emission reductions, where we operate also with subordinated loans, sometimes with conversion options, with ticket size from 1 to 10 million euros. The typical investment types in these investment categories is in the scaling up is first of all capex investments to facility build up. So this would be like the first bigger scale or industrial and commercial scale facility investment, quite typically. Then also we are very much agreeing with this analysis that was presented, that quite many of the innovations needed already exist. The problem is more how to speed up dramatically the market take-up of those solutions. And in those in that phase also we offer this sort of working capital for the existing physical solutions to get faster market take-up. Then also the third typical type would be then a scale up of digital climate solutions. So then these platforms that enable emission reductions, the idea here is that there are some bottlenecks where the platform itself might not be a hugely appealing and hugely scalable business in itself. But these platforms can enable an ecosystem of growth companies to build scalable climate business on top of these platforms. And these platforms can be either physical assets or sometimes also digital assets. So they can be, for example, this sort of a shared shared physical infrastructure, for example, in carbon storage area, or on the side of the digital platforms, it can be, for example, combining and making available public data that enables digital climate solutions, scalable digital climate solutions. So these sort of a platform investments is the other investment category for us. So then the next slide. We operate on a 3-step investment criteria, which means that all of our investment decisions go through the same set of criteria, which has 3 steps. There's 3 preconditions. Then we have our impact targets and impact criteria, and then we also do this sort of a target-specific impact analysis. The preconditions include this sort of a commercial credibility, where in our case, it has to have like a credible plan of, for example, being able to pay back our subordinated loan. However, our time frame is much more patient that you typically see from private funding. We also want to verify that there is this added value from this public funding from climate change as a precondition. And then also as a precondition, we do this EU taxonomy's do no significant harm principle, which means that that the target cannot have adverse effects on environment on any of the 6 key dimensions of the EU taxonomy, for example, water or natural resources. And then if the target meets the preconditions, we mostly make our decisions on these impact criteria, and most important of which is obviously the emission reduction potential, but then obviously also combined with growth and productivity potential. And at this stage, we also check whether the target is fully compliant with the EU taxonomy framework or not. So then moving on to the next slide. Just at the end too, but hopefully a bit more concretizing examples of what types of decisions this kind of policy approach can produce. So here's 2 of our recent funding decisions. So first of all, Solar Foods, which is a disruptive protein production innovation, actually goes very close to what I think Richard was mentioning, that we will produce everything from CO2. We will also produce protein from CO2, and Solar Food innovation is actually linked with that idea. So this is a 10 million euro capital loan for Solar Foods to build a large-scale demonstration facility in Finland. And then the other example here is Elstor, which is an example of our scale-up of deployment of existing physical climate solution. So Elstor is a container-sized storage, which can store, for example, locally produced renewable energy into heat actually, and it produces either heat or steam for industrial processes. And here the bottleneck is that the build-up costs for one of these Elstor units is several hundreds of thousands of euros, and they are really big investment for the customers that the Elstor needs to sell to. So we are actually providing a financial instrument to Elstor, which provides them with working capital funding for building these Elstor units when they have identified the suitable customer, which then